How does gender affect participation in sport? The terms of sex and gender are typically seen as the same thing when it comes to people using both words. However, this is not the case, and the terms sex and gender do have different meanings. Sex is seen as the biological things given to a woman and men, such as reproductive organs, chromosomes, and also things like hormones. Gender is seen as traits which men and women have. These would be norms, roles, and relationships between both men and women. The gender patriarchy shows how men are proven to be more powerful and seen as more important than women. They have more choice, and this results in them being able to take part in more things such as sports, because they don't get judged for this, as it is shown as more for males. Some examples of how the hierarchy shows males as more dominant is once a couple gets married, the women will take the male's last name. This shows that the women then have joined his family, but not the other way around. The gender pay gap is huge for the hierarchy because in sport, men are paid more than the women for doing the exact same job. This shows how much men's sport is favoured over women's sport, and these are the reasons why some women's sports players are still having to have other jobs while also playing sport at the same time. They also have unpaid work of looking after children because this is known as a women's job at home, while the man goes out and supplies for the family and earns money. So women don't have a chance to play sport. Gender affects the participation in community sport, as there are many different perspectives which then create this barrier between men and women and the difference of participating in sport. The inequalities of sport all stem from the history of women not being able to take part in sports, even though there have been some differences between the beginning of sexism and now. There still hasn't been a big enough change, as sexism still exists, and these comments should never affect women and her taking part in sport. There are many different reasons of why inequality in sport takes place, and some of these reasonings are discrimination. This is a huge factor because some people have different views on why women shouldn't play sport because they believe that it's not good enough and not very good to watch. This makes women's sports devalued and means that women can be put off playing because they don't want these comments to be made towards them. Women having low self-esteem also plays a part because they put too much pressure on themselves to be a standard in which men expect them to be, and this makes them believe they can't do it, and then they stop participating in sport so the comments aren't made. Stopping the participation in making less and less girls love sport and is leading to more girls' teams falling because they are giving up on themselves. There aren't many women role models in sport, and these are the people which young girls should be able to look up to and aspire to be. Instead, because there aren't many, it gives them less reason to work hard to get to the level they are wanting to get to. A huge example of this would be that in football, boys would have big faces such as Ronaldo and Messi to look up to, whereas girls don't really have this as much because women's sport isn't as enjoyed as men's sport is. Encouragement from friends, managers and families are a lot to make a girl want to take part in sport, as they have the reassurance that they are doing the correct thing and people are supporting them through any decision that they make. If they have family members which are sexist, this will influence them to not want to take part because they are scared about what comments they are going to receive. Managers of sports teams play a huge role because if they compare the girls to the boys, this will make them feel uncomfortable and could result in them quitting. Opportunities don't come easy in the women's game, which makes it harder for young girls to keep at it and persist because they don't really know if it'll be worth it in the end, whereas the men don't have to worry about this as much because success looks way better for them because they get better pay, better opportunities, better quality managers and things like that. Women's games also aren't televised as much as men's games, so this is why there isn't as much money going into the women and they can't get as good facilities or as much support, and this makes girls think it's not worth it because they might not go anywhere, and then the fun is drained out of it and this loses the whole purpose of participation. Feminism is the belief in social, economic and political equality of all the sexes. There are 3 different waves of feminism which can link to why gender affects participation in sport. The first wave started in the 19th century. This is when the first political movement took place for the Western world on feminism ideas. The goal of the first wave feminism was to get to the point across that women are human and not a property. In this first wave, women were given the right to vote and could put their opinions forward, which showed how women were finally getting a say in things. The second wave took place in the 1960s and 70s. This is where liberal, radical and cultural feminism was introduced. Women gained access to male-dominant areas but resist belief men and women are the same. Then the third and final wave of feminism started in the 1990s. This is where women started getting more rights and power. At this point they could think more about their sexuality and who they are really as people. This is where women got to choose how they lived their lives. In the third wave of feminism, they also become more conscious of race, which is another whole sociological idea, what affects participation in sport. The first statistic is that 40 to 41% of women in the sporting industry reported facing gender discrimination, which means that many women and girls are too scared to admit that they'd experienced discrimination. This is because they don't want to be seen as weak, so they don't report incidents which take place. Only 7% of women have reported incidents of sexism because they just see it as normal, because comments are made constantly in the women's game and it is just normalised as the comments are just constantly coming. Women only make up 18% of qualified coaches and 9% of senior coaches, because if both men and women go for the same jobs, the men usually get it because men are seen as better in sport jobs. So they'll be way overlooked and the women won't even get a chance. There are only 4% of media reporting covers of women's sport, which means that the men are getting all the best reporters and the women aren't seen as the same when they are all playing sport. They're all playing the same sport, but they don't get the same recognition as the men do, which isn't really fair. 17% of sports still don't offer the same pay to women as they do men, which is bad because they play the exact same sports and do the exact same jobs, but then the best men get paid more than the best women in the game, which shouldn't be allowed. Such as the likes of Ronaldo and Messi, they get paid millions and millions, whereas the best women players aren't even close to any of them wages. This strategy, created by Sport England, took place in 2015 to help all women and girls active no matter their shape, size and ability. This strategy would help many women and girls because they will see that all sport isn't bad and that they aren't always going to be judged. Getting more women involved in sport will help because they will improve their overall physical and mental well-being at the same time. To raise awareness of the strategy, Sport England will work with organisations such as the FA and professional football clubs because they will be able to promote and get into the women that there's no reason to be ashamed to get involved in sport. And if some women are watching these football clubs or their kids are involved with the FA, it gives them more of a reason to see the strategy and want to take part in more physical activity. The campaign has helped 1.6 million women and girls get active and get involved in more and more physical activity. This brings a whole positive attitude towards women's sport because the more people get involved, the more people see the awareness. As more people get involved, the more women are starting to talk to their friends, and the word of mouth is then spread across the whole community, and that gets more and more girls involved. 75% of women are wanting to start getting active, which is a factor that helps this girl can, because if women are wanting to participate, they will be easier to work with, and they will show that they are wanting to take part and get fitter. However, the scheme will also work with participants which don't enjoy sport and don't really know how to get into it, but just know they are wanting to help themselves, which then the whole This Girl can show them how they can start. The awareness of This Girl Can is a huge, as 37 million people have watched the This Girl Can video, which will really push the thought of them taking part and wanting to improve their overall health and well-being. The video is being promoted by professional athletes, pushes women to come forward, and even if they are struggling to get into it, they can show that they are willing to look for support on how to first start getting involved in physical activity. Here is the reference list for my overall presentation. Thank you.